Hello everybody in the hall. I am Nidhi Maheshwari and I am the MC for this session. I believe still some of our members are busy in taking lunch, though we would be liking to start the session on time and follow the timelines. I think people are joining in. So let's start the session now. So for this session, which is cyber security, electronic commerce and digital connectivity, I would like to call upon stage our moderator, Mr. Nehal Sanghavi, who is the Senior Advisor, Innovation and Partnership US Agency for International Development. Mr. Sanghavi, could you please come on the stage? Yeah, welcome. Please have a seat. As speaker, I would like to call upon Mr. Vivek Srivastava. Welcome, Mr. Srivastava. Ms. Gitanjali Chaturvedi. Mr. Syed Almas Kabir. Great. So I welcome everybody on the stage, and Mr. Nehal Sanghavi will give a short introduction of our speakers here, and he would start the session. So on to Mr. Sanghavi for the session.
Thanks, Nidhi, and thanks to the organizers for the opportunity. Good afternoon. We have a challenge in front of us. Of course, it's Friday afternoon post-lunch, and when they first requested me to be a moderator, I was so proud of this opportunity. And then, of course, I saw the time slot and realized they must think I'm a terrible moderator to give me this time slot. So our challenge is to at least not snore. If you're going to sleep, please do not snore. And we will do our best up here to ensure that it is a lively conversation that you can be engaged in to hopefully prevent you from falling asleep. We do have an interesting topic, and we've got 3 great speakers up here. Before we get into the heart of the topic, I want to mention a couple of things. Last year at the SAARC Investment Forum, which took place a year ago in Colombo, the following quote took place: "Digital connectivity is the future of South Asia's integration, full stop." Earlier this year, in the Hindustan Times, there was an article about how digital connectivity, and specifically the ability to lay overland fiber optic cable, is the key to South Asia's connectivity. These topics are topics that get a lot of attention in the press, and we're also fortunate that Secretary of State Pompeo, just in July, launched the Digital Partnership for the Indo-Pacific area, where he talks about connectivity, he talks about cybersecurity, and he talks about this idea to encourage open, interoperable, reliable, and secure digital infrastructure as a benefit for all in the region. So let me open it up by giving an opportunity for our 3 speakers to introduce themselves. I will not be reading their bios. You have their bios with you. But I will give them an opportunity to introduce themselves. And then we're going to get into some of the following topics. We're going to talk about the opportunities for digital connectivity, but we're also going to talk about the opportunities specifically about overland fiber optic cables. As we know, and as we've been discussing over the last 2 days, this region, unfortunately, isn't very connected. And there are opportunities there to do things overland as opposed to just rely on underwater connectivity when it comes to fiber optics. So we'll touch on that. We'll also touch on the opportunities with 4G and new 5G technologies. We'll also talk about security, cybersecurity, and that's something I'm very interested in hearing from you on specifically, Vivek. We're also going to talk about gender. We're also going to talk about data localization, and then we're going to talk finally about my favorite topic, data for development or digital development. So with that, if I could just ask you, Vivek, to please introduce yourself and have some opening remarks.
Thanks, Nehal. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Vivek Srivastava. I'm a cybersecurity professional working with Cisco. I've been in the industry for about 19 years. The specialization that I have is, of course, cybersecurity. I think quickly, when I want to open the session with my remarks, I would talk about a couple of things. I think we should look at the realization that we can have right now, looking at the digital disruption happening across us. You see the disruption, whether it's across people, the citizens, the way we live, the way we are connected today. Look at the government initiatives, the citizen services that they are launching, leveraging the digital platforms. Look at the businesses, the way businesses are transforming, leveraging this digital disruption. We are talking about, of course, the connectivity. It all boils down to, of course, enabling more and more of digital, disruptions. What two things that comes out to my mind very, very clearly is, one, while we can look at multiple opportunities coming our way, starting from the citizens to the government to the businesses, and opening the channel for even the less privileged people to be able to do something good for them. One area of challenge that comes in very, very clearly, that it also becomes an engine for the adversaries. It also becomes an opportunity for the bad guys. It also becomes a great, great platform for the hackers or the bad guys who want to earn something which does not belong to them. The way we are connected, the way we use cloud, the way we use different digital platforms, our data is everywhere. And it becomes much, much easier for them to probably throw a dart in the dark and be very sure that it will land somewhere. So they can gain a lot out of it. So when we talk about all those connectivities, when we talk about the digital disruption or the initiatives that we want to take in that direction, I think one thing that comes very clearly to my mind is that security is something that has to be taken into consideration from the day one. At the time of the inception itself of your policies, of your strategies or your new business initiatives, you should talk about security as well. You should take care of the measures that are required for your businesses or for your initiatives to be successful in terms of security. So that will be probably a couple of cents from my side initially.
So before we even turn it over to Gitanjali, let me ask you a question on that. How often do you engage with other governments in the region on this topic of regional security or cybersecurity on behalf of Cisco?
So I normally represent Cisco security for at least the SAARC nation. So I quite often work with Indian government as well as the Bangladesh government, Bhutan, Nepal, and all that. If you look at Cisco also had a lot of cooperation activity that we do with all these governments. Like say, one of the areas where we very, very clearly participate with all these governments is the sharing of the intelligence in cybersecurity, the threat intelligence. If we get to know about something in hand or beforehand, what we do first is, with our channels that we have established with, say, CERT India or CERT Bangladesh, first thing that we do, we immediately get them the information so that they can leverage that information and warn the people across them as well. So primarily the interaction is on the intelligence sharing. The second part of it is their digital initiatives. You talk about digital Bangladesh or digital India or various other citizen services that government of India is launching, considering the smart cities itself, right? There we work with the government very, very clearly in defining which are the basic parameters that they should look at from cybersecurity perspective or from the cybersecurity governance perspective, which are the basic things which are to be inbuilt. So I think it's a very, very a normal process at Cisco that we engage with these governments very, very regularly, and we bring in the best practices that we see across the globe to governments as well.
Great, thank you. Let me actually turn it over to you, sir. Mr. Kabir, tell us about yourself and tell us what your thoughts are on this topic.
Thank you. I am in the IT business for the last 3 decades in Bangladesh, and my company operates a fiber optic network all around Bangladesh, and having presence in every cities and small towns and some of the villages as well. And that is why I will be sharing my experiences, that how we have built that fiber optic, and most of it actually overhead aerial, so it's not underground. And so there are challenges in that. I am also the president of Bangladesh Association of Software and Information Services, BASIS, which is the equivalent to NASSCOM in India. We work directly with the government for the industry, and we have the policy advocacy with the government, advocating for the industry's needs and industry's well-being, and how we can expand the industry. And so that is how we that is what we negotiate with the government. And as you all know that our current government has this mandate to build a digital Bangladesh by 2021. There's a Vision 2021 for digital Bangladesh, and the government has taken a few steps towards that. And BASIS has been working very closely, hand in hand, in realizing that vision. And there is also, in doing that, we have been encountering security threats. Of course, the connectivity is a very big challenge. The infrastructure is a very big challenge. Although the government has been very supportive, another very big challenge that we are facing right now in Bangladesh is, though it's not exactly connectivity, but it's towards building the digital Bangladesh, is the trained or the skilled human resources. So that is another shortage that we have, and I believe that is a very common problem in this fast-growing industry all over the world.
Great. So let me ask you, when you do find yourself engaging with a potential cybersecurity threat, one that's perhaps even regional, do you connect with India at all?
Well, yes, we do seek help from cybersecurity experts like Cisco and other cybersecurity experts. Recently, just a couple of years back, you know that there was a big heist in the central bank, and we actually had to invite foreign experts into Bangladesh, and we had to take their inputs. We have been developing our own security experts, but I guess it will take a little more time.
Sure. Great, thank you for that. And last but not least, Gitanjali, please tell us about yourself.
My name is Gitanjali. I work with the World Bank. Among other things, I'm the gender focal point for India. And essentially, I work towards mainstreaming gender in all our World Bank operations. And that is what brings me to this discussion, where we're working especially to ensure that there is inclusion in the digital space of women, and especially women at the bottom of the pyramid, because we find that there is a considerable gender gap when it comes to including women in the digital space. And how that impacts women is that they are not educated enough, they do not know how to use technology. And not only that, when you actually talk about empowering them economically, they find that they cannot take their businesses to scale because they do not have access to e-commerce websites or lack the wherewithal to do it. So typically, if they do want to go to scale, they need help from other organizations, a middleman who can help them with that, or some other digital platform who basically cuts into their profits. So the idea is essentially to mainstream the digital world for them, to make it more accessible, because what we have also found is that if you look at the global rates of female participation in the digital connectivity, it's less than 20% of women who actually participate actively in this space or use any of these channels. What also actually comes to my mind in terms of, more and more digital inclusion is the fact that there is also this added threat. Because we say that if you give women the digital space, you actually increase their security, but we also find that it also harms their security. And not always do they know how to keep themselves safe from these threats that come up. There's a lot of trolling, there's a lot of hacking. Women tend to be more vulnerable than most other people in the online space as well. And we're seeing a lot of that come up now, surface now, and I'm sure
If I may make a point, I think that's a very important point.
Yeah.
I'll talk about the psychology of the bad guys, the adversaries. If they want to do something bad, they find it easier. Because general notion is that women can be intimidated slightly easier, right?
Yeah.
With my personal experience, having been married for 15 years, I can tell you, no, that is not true. They cannot be intimidated at all. But that's the notion that the adversaries carry. And what happens is, when they try and target, when they know that someone is behind this particular piece is going to be a woman and can be intimidated faster or easier, what they also look at is, if this lady gets intimidated, there will be multiple support systems that she may have, which will come to help immediately. One of the case in point that we were discussing, one of the actresses in India, I would not take the name because I don't, because I forgot the name. I would not take the name because I don't remember the name. Her email ID got hacked, and she was traveling somewhere outside, probably about a couple of years back, and not properly connected. An email went out to all the close associates, family members, friends that I'm in need, I need some money, can you transfer the money on this account immediately? Those emails were sent out to about 15 people from an email account, and some 3 of them actually transferred the money. Then she had to go make a local, complaint and all that. So because
that's a very interesting way of crowdfunding.
It's
and
very common.
that primarily happened when she checked with those 3 friends. Why would you think that I'm in trouble? He said, I was worried that in case if you were, what would happen? It could have been a hoax, but what if you're actually in trouble? So I just did it just to be safer. So can be the case in point. But another point that I want to add, when it comes to women, I'm seeing the other turnaround as well. Probably at the lower strata of the society, you will see that women need little more empowerment from digital perspective. But if you see the other side from the cybersecurity angle, if I tell you, I see a lot of women getting into cybersecurity industry as saviors, as developers, as the women who have the wherewithal, the mind, the intellect to actually think ahead of the hackers. A lot of people, a lot of women are actually there in our research organization who do first-hand research and many a times kill the cyber attacks. So there's another piece. I normally believe that women are a little differently wired, so their intelligence is completely at different level. Always, you will find little bit extra coming from their intelligence, and that's what we see in cybersecurity industry as well.
Great, thank you. One thing I forgot to mention at the outset is we do have this Slido, so please think about your questions, and we'll also turn it over to the audience in a bit to ask some questions. So let me ask you, Vivek, along those lines. You talk about the issues that we face, the potential threats from bad guys. Where are these bad guys? Are they in India? Are they in the region? Are they outside of the region? Does Cisco know? Does Cisco care?
I don't know. There could be some in the room itself. Seriously,
Working.
there could be. They're everywhere. You never know. See, I'll tell you what happens now. See, they become much more organized. They do seminars like this. They do conferences like this. They share intelligence. They share thoughts. They do these kind of panel discussions as well. And there are a lot of small organizations which have mushroomed, which work as a supplier to these big groups, the hacker groups. Normally, I would say in last 5 years they've become much more organized. They have a lot of money, and they pick up their targets very selectively, and they go only after that. They would not probably spray their attacks to 10,000 organizations. They will pick up 1 or 2. Maybe in the countries where the geopolitical scenarios are such that you can get away with the cybercrime, they'll prefer those countries. That's the reason probably we saw that is happening in Central Bank in Bangladesh. And they'll go after that. Months or probably even years they can spend on that. Now look at the locations. While we talk about multiple locations coming across APAC, we talk about multiple locations coming across Africa and Middle East. We talk about locations being in Russia, being in China. So what will be very surprising to you is going to be the largest of these guys are actually state funded. Most of these states have a large, member of the teams which are funded by state, and they work on it. If you look at the population wise, probably I would say the APAC probably will take a little lead because of the large influence that we have of China. But even in India, a lot of attacks in India and Pakistan have also initiated. If you see advanced attacks, if I talk about very advanced attacks, I would talk about, of course, APAC as the region, as the source of the, people.
Yeah, thanks for that insight. Gitanjali, let me ask you. We talk about women's empowerment, and we talk about the idea that digital connectivity can empower women. Can you cite some examples, specific examples where you see that in your work? And when you do work as the World Bank, you typically work with governments, state, central, maybe even municipal, I don't know, but certainly governments. Do you think that governments can play a bigger role when it comes to empowering women digitally, or do you think the private sector can?
So I really believe that it has to be a combination, given the diverse set of population that we're working with and diverse socio-economic status of women. So to begin with, I think women have there is a gender divide in any case across the socioeconomic profile. So even at the very high end, you have women who are kind of intimidated by technology and do take time. You don't have enough computer science graduates, for example, who are women. So there is that divide. But if you look at the bottom of the pyramid, the divide even becomes more pronounced, because you have women who have no access to even a basic mobile phone. And in case they do, it's a usual Nokia phone that is shared with the whole family. And that, again, you know, with all your connectivity issues, is really hardly ever really works. So I think it has to be a combination. You have to ensure that there is connectivity, and for which the government is, of course, key in ensuring that there is connectivity. And then you have to ensure with the private sector partners that these modes are actually accessed more productively. And you have to then ensure that it is used for more productive purposes, such as education, such as, you know, e-commerce, such as learning, and so on. So you have to really ensure across the value chain, as it were, that there is more participation of women, that IT becomes an enabler, the digital space becomes something that is not, you know, like this dark cloud where anything can happen and people can be lurking just to take advantage of newcomers, as it were, and it is actually a friendly space. So that is very, very important. Now, you asked about the World Bank. We have in our projects been working with the government to ensure that this digital gap is actually met. It is bridged, as it were. So in many of our agribusiness projects, for example, we have a space for digital marketing, for e-commerce. We're building platforms. And of course, the government across the country is doing that very proactively for almost every project. Every department has a website, and they make sure that, you know, it sort of it reaches out and it does what it's supposed to do, and there is all of that. But we also have actively a project that deals with digital financial inclusion of women in the informal sector. And one of the focus states, two of the focus states are in the Northeast, which will look at ways in which connectivity issues in the BBIN region can be resolved, and women can actually participate more actively in, you know, in commerce and trade and so on.
Could you tell us a little bit about that project?
Sure. The project is it's funded by the Japanese government, and we are administering the fund. It is being executed through SEVA, which is one of the predominant trade organizations that brings together almost 2 million women in the region. And the project specifically aims at empowering 1 million women and reaching them, making digital connectivity available to them. And actually the reason behind this was the recent demonetization. In the informal sector, there were anecdotal reports and other informal reports of how women faced serious challenges. Most of their savings were wiped out because of demonetization, because they had no bank accounts. So to actually, and in fact, it impacted not just their homes and households, it also impacted issues around nutrition, education of their families, and other income security. So the way to actually sort of bridge that and ensure that these shocks don't impact the poorest of the poor anymore, we felt that it was important to connect them digitally, to take that insecurity away, and to make sure also for traders who were actually walking around with, you know, thousands and lakhs of rupees in cash, there was added insecurity of being robbed or attacked. So this takes all of these insecurities away. And we're in the process of developing this. We're looking at 1 million women. In the Northeast in particular, about 20 to 30,000 women that we're hoping to be able to empower through digital inclusion. That's essentially what the plan is. And across different trades that include agro-processing, tourism, you know, various other natural NTFP produce, and so on. So that's the project.
Great. Sounds like a great initiative.
It's
Thank
fun,
you.
yeah.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Kabir, let me ask you, in Bangladesh, what sorts of things did the private sector or the government do to combat the issue of cybersecurity?
Okay, you see, the main problem with the cybersecurity, not only in Bangladesh and actually everywhere, is the awareness, or the lack of awareness. So it could be as simple as that I'm me sharing my password with others, or very callous about my network. So I think that is the biggest challenge that we have been facing. But recently, especially after that incident with the central bank 2 years ago, there have been a lot of awareness that have been being, I mean, from the government side, they are trying to build the awareness. From the private sector, from basis, we are also trying to make people aware, the users rather, to aware that the do's and don'ts when you are using the internet. We have gone to schools and we have taken up a project for the children, what to do and what to do and what not to do, not sharing their information with strangers on internet, that kind of awareness. Bangladesh government has built a CERT. There's a Bangladesh Computer Council under that.
For the lay folks in the room, can you explain what that means?
That's the emergency response team for if there is any security breach, so that they can intercept. Our police also have built a cybersecurity department, very focused, and they can actually monitor, they can actually intercept, and they can find out if there has been some breach or there has been some anonymous email coming from somewhere, so they can actually pinpoint, and they have made arrests so far. Very recently, just last month, our Digital Security Act got passed by the cabinet, and this Digital Security Act will actually address a lot of things. Although some things have been missing, they are missing, and we are trying to convince the government, like the credit card fraud or the debit card fraud. What will happen if there is a credit card fraud? So those things are not there, specifically not mentioned in the Security Act, but I'm sure it will be amended.
And going back to the topic of gender, Bangladesh is one of the leaders in the world when it comes to microfinance. And many of the recipients of microfinance have been women, self-help groups, etc. Are there specific examples in the gender space where you think Bangladesh, private sector or government, is sort of pushing the envelope a bit to empower women?
Well, Bangladesh has done wonders in gender balancing, especially women empowerment in the RMG sector, the ready-made garment sector. As you know, that Bangladesh is the second largest RMG producer in the world after China. And in that sector, women participation is mind-boggling. It's actually, that has changed the entire scenario of the Bangladesh, especially in the rural area.
Is there an opportunity to use digital?
Well, no, I'm talking about the RMG sector. But unfortunately, in the IT industry itself, as Gitanjali was talking about, that there is a lack of female coming into or studying computer science. And that is very, very, very true, that in the IT industry, you will hardly see a women programmer or a women entrepreneur. There are, but very, very few. So that is what we are now trying to address. Government has a program, it's called She Power. We have been working with World Bank and ITC, and there's 2 projects that we are working with. It's called She Connect, and there's another called She Trades, and where we are encouraging women to get into the IT business. And we have taken them outside also to participate in fairs, like very recently in Bangkok, CBIT, ASEAN. Another very interesting thing that I really want to share is about the e-commerce. And I think this is a wonderful opportunity for women to come into the business through e-commerce, because you can do the business from home. Because in our subcontinent, there are some stigma, female going out of the house and doing businesses. So you can still be at home and do the business. And our women have taken that opportunity, because we have about 3,000 Facebook pages through which, at least 3,000 Facebook pages through which the F-commerce is going on in Bangladesh. And most of these 3,000 pages are owned by women and operated by women. And this is a very, very encouraging scenario. And we have about 2,000 e-commerce sites. And many of these e-commerce sites, I would say about 20-25% are actually operated by women.
Excellent.
So that's a very encouraging thing, and that is what we are trying to encourage more and more, and how to make e-commerce more popular. So that is what the industry is doing, and the government is also doing, increasing the the logistics, the reach, the postal services, the courier, that thing. And I believe that after we talk about the regional connectivity, we should also think about this e-commerce, how to make e-commerce cross-border. And if that can, if that happens, then the opportunity becomes enormous.
I just had very quick comments to what you said. In fact, you raised very interesting and pertinent issues. The first is about the presence of women as programmers in the IT industry. But in the ready-made garment industry, where you already have almost 90% of women who are participating on the floor, on the shop floor, as tailors and so on, there is still scope to ensure that they actually move up the factory floor. And in that, there is space for digital the IT space to actually participate very proactively to be part of the RMG factory. And this way you can look, in that sense, you can look at several other industries that have strong IT components where women are really missing. For example, manufacturing, the IT space, I mean, there's plenty of room to actually accommodate women. It's totally men all the time. So that's one point I wanted to make. The second, and you rightly said, that women are actually doing a lot of e-commerce. I agree they're doing a lot of e-commerce and so on, and that's really catching on, and it's actually lowering the boundaries and lowering the walls. In fact, we worked very closely with Arong in Bangladesh, where about 6 or 7 years ago, they were looking at just removing all the brick and mortar shops because it was adding to the cost of the product, of their products. They as a handicraft sector, and because, as you know, women are connected with Arong, they're the ones who produce all the beautiful clothes that we wear. They were having serious competition from the RMG sector, which was selling clothes at a fraction of the cost of that the Arong clothes were being produced at. So essentially, they were thinking of doing away with that and just having platforms that would sell their products for much cheaper. So I think it's not just the price that we're looking at, we're also looking at quality, and we're also looking at ways in which the gender divide can be integrated and bridged through IT solutions, which don't necessarily involve just the computer science and just the programming space, but there are several other options out there.
Excellent. Great specific examples from both of you of how economic empowerment can be the result of what happens when we empower women digitally, and with whatever digital tool we can. One example that we have in India on that topic is when we encourage digital payments. Yes. Because if you get paid digitally, chances are you will transact digitally. Yeah. Chances are you will become more digitally literate, which will save you money from actually working with cash all the time. So great, both great examples.
I'll just add to that. The success of bKash. I don't know if you have heard about bKash. It has become the largest MFS, mobile financing service in the entire world. The success of bKash was actually by the women sending their money they earned from the industry to the village. So that is the real success, behind bKash.
Excellent. And like we talk about often in India, where we have more cell phones than toilets, perhaps the digital infrastructure that gets created in this part of the world can help the entire region grow economically, because I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Turning it back to Vivek, I have a question for you. As somebody who is relatively digitally illiterate, let's say, somebody who uses social media, obviously I use digital technology for work and other things. What would be your advice to me to not be caught up by the bad guys? Okay, so
I'm going to make it simple, not the technology answer. Let's look at the way we approach this particular piece. We talk about the concept of road safety. Right? We talk about the concept of fire safety. We talk about the concept of educating people of how to what actions do you need to take when it comes to the earthquakes and all that. There also should be a concept of internet safety, right? If I have to make my two comments, I would rather say just two basic principles. If you follow, I think you'll be pretty safe. Number one, no trust. Don't trust everything. Don't blindly trust. Rather, I would to be very specific. spend a second to understand why this particular piece. There's nothing called as free. Those offers of claiming a free iPhone, or someone saying that he's going to transfer some money to your account, or for that matter something coming all the way free, or offering you some job or something like that. I'm sorry. So number one, don't trust easily. Don't trust blindly. Number two, be a little bit of aware of the situation, what you actually do. There is a bad dark web out there. Be very, very clear what you do on internet. Not everything that you click is going to be safe. So the click happy attitude has to be slightly pushed away. And number three, I would say is keep talking to the young children about it. Because they're very much connected. They should be knowing what is good, what is bad. They cannot take a decision at their age. So if you inculcate that from the beginning itself, I think they'll grow up to be much more safer internet user than anyone else.
And if you take a look at our question 1 from Slido, which is directed to you, with limited resources, what should the country of Bhutan do to ensure against threats from cybersecurity?
Well, I have had some interaction with the DIT of Bhutan. I spent some time there. I think I understand, the infrastructure perspective, there will be certain limitations. I think this was the situation probably 5 years back or 7 years back in the countries like India as well. What we can look at is, probably look at more of a regional cooperation. There are many things which can be drawn from India or from Bangladesh or from Nepal for that matter, and vice versa. First thing that we can start with is, look at the best practices, look at the acts, look at the policies that the government is enforcing towards cyber security. Some of it can be just replicated without making any infrastructural changes. Number two, the areas of intelligence sharing. Can we learn from each other? If we have seen something happening bad in Bangladesh, can we understand what was that? Can we take those 2 or 3 steps to ensure that we are at least covered from there? So learn from each other's mistake, and share as much as possible in terms of, I would say rather, a larger regional cooperation on the cyber security area probably can help rather than making a lot of infrastructural investments.
Great. We're going to open up to questions from the audience, and we're going to go back and forth between Slido and the audience. So please start thinking about your question. Before we get there, I'm going to turn it back over to the end over here, to the end of the panel here, in the sense that I want to speak to you, Mr. Kabir, about question number 2. What are the challenges in Bangladesh when it comes to 3G, 4G, 5G? What are the challenges and opportunities? And quite frankly, what do you think about the challenges and opportunities when it comes to the region?
Okay. Well, Bangladesh has already deployed, the operators have already deployed 3G and 4G in Bangladesh. We have been talking about 5G since last July, and there is a target, a soft target of launching 5G by 2021. But of course, not the entire Bangladesh has 3G and 4G coverage till today. This is because, first of all, one thing that I'm sure you all know, that Bangladesh is one of the most densely populated area of the world, and that is why it's actually quite easy to deploy mobile towers and get the coverage. Because if you just put one tower, you can cover more people. So that is a good part. The problem is that why the operators are not too much encouraged to go and deploy the 3G or 4G in the remote areas, because of the lack of content. What would you do with a 4G connection in a village if you do not have a content to use? Will you? I mean, you can see a music video on YouTube or a cinema on YouTube, but how long will you do that? So unless you have a localized content, Bangla content, I'm talking about Bangladesh. So if you do not have the localized content, there won't be the need of use. Anyway, the government has, as part of the Vision 2021 of building digital Bangladesh, the government has been trying to transform the citizen services into e-services. And once these e-services, these services becomes online, then I'm sure people will be needing to use those services, and that will be the content they will be needing to use, and there will be new need for 3G and 4G and eventually 5G.
And that will be in local language.
Yes, of course, local language. Otherwise, it's no use.
Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be localized.
Yeah, right. Good, great. Okay, questions from the audience. Yes, please, if somebody could pass a microphone.
Thank you. I am Sanjay Mangla and working for Cuts International. My question is that we are talking about lot more about cyber security, and I think here the rules and regulations or laws come into the play importantly. So what is your take on the issue of data localization in the today's age vis-a-vis its cost and benefits for both companies as well as the country to to secure our data more and better? Thank you.
Yeah, excellent question. We're talking about connectivity, and then almost by default, localization starts to sort of take the conversation in a different direction. So what are your thoughts, Vivek?
That's true. I think, so there are two aspects to it. Number one is, of course, you want to go back to, as an organization, as a government, you want to go back to your citizens and tell them that you are taking all the measures possible to keep your data safe, to respect your privacy, to respect your personal data, and take all these steps possible to secure it. The another area of which comes out of it is also to look at the global organizations which are still offshoring the data to multiple other locations, and kind of still building businesses, taking revenue from, say, local customers. The another aspects to that data localization policies are also is to, can you bring some of those infrastructure into India so that you generate some more, or into that country to generate some more of jobs, to give more businesses to local guys, and to be little more sure of all the intellectual data or property that you have is still gonna be in your control. I think GDPR was a big step, in last few months. We have seen that happening with Bangladesh with Digital Security Act, which got accepted by the Parliament, I think last month, and the Right to Privacy Act in India, which has been submitted. Justice Sri Krishna report has been submitted already to the Parliament. I think they'll take action about it, and we'll see some more of these localization rules coming into play in multiple other countries because of both the benefits. One is, of course, to have a level of assurance of the data safety, and second is also to give the preference to the local business.
So you're for it?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, well, we all know that why governments are, or some governments are pushing for data localization law or act. In Bangladesh, we just passed our ICT policy 2018 last week from the cabinet, and there is one clause about data localization. You see, if my data, my citizens' data is staying in another country, and if for some reason that company who is hosting that data refuses to give the data, I mean, there is no policy, to catch that or, get hold of that company, right? So, and this is why the whole concept of data localization came, that the private data, the citizens' data must be in the geographic area of the country. But now we are talking about the regional connectivity. Now, only if, or maybe when we have the regional connectivity, and if we have a uniform law or standard, then maybe we can do away with the localization. Like, I can set up a regional data center in Nepal or in Bhutan, because I don't know if you know this, that Nepal and Bhutan are very ideal for data center because of the temperature and everything. So we can have a local regional data center over there, and all these countries can have their data put up there. But all these countries must sign into a one common law and one common standard, so that if anything happens, the countries can actually claim and do whatever is necessary to get that data. So that is in the future, but for now, I guess localization is the only way to go.
Gitanjali, any
I'm
thoughts?
completely in agreement with both of them, actually, and I also feel that maybe as a forum, there are a couple of gaps that you see in the South Asia region. One is, as opposed to let's say Africa, which has a court that takes into account all these issues and legislates and sort of, and you know, the governments actually respect the views of the court. And similarly in Europe, we don't have a structure like that that really governs such issues in South Asia. So that is critical. And I think we have to aim towards getting to that, at least on issues of regional connectivity, such as the IT space and so on, where something like that can actually be hosted, and we can preempt situations that will arise in future. And I think that is the way to go forward.
If I may add to Gitanjali's point, I think that's a very, very valid point. The moment you look at the regional cooperation or regional connectivity going to get improved, the policy is going to get a little more common. You know, we understand that the other country is also taking those same kind of, you know, restraints that we are kind of observing here. Being little futuristic, probably it will become like something like our visas, right? You can enter certain countries without, you know, applying for visa or without requiring a visa, just showing your passport. Probably same way our data may also be handled in future. You know, it's okay. Indian data can be hosted in, say, Bangladesh, because we have the regional cooperation. We understand what measures do you take, what measures do we take, and we have the regional, you know, agreement that we can share the data with each other whenever it is required. So it may get to that stage going forward. But as of now, yes, localization is the answer.
Great points. Good. Questions? More questions? Okay, then we'll go to Slido. Slido's question: what are the emerging cybersecurity threats and how can they be countered?
So I think one of the very common ones that we are seeing these days is going to be ransomware, where someone, you know, kind of take control of your machine, says I've got all your data, I've got everything encrypted. If you not pay this much of money in bitcoins to me, I'm going to erase all that data. I've seen a little improvisation on that one, where someone sent a mail saying that I've recorded using your webcam, I've recorded some of your personal movements, I've recorded what sites you have been visiting, and all those are there with me. If you're not going to pay this much of bitcoins, I'm going to release that to all your friends, you know, which are there in the contact list. So now they are not only the sense of losing some data, they are also adding some sense of personal humility, you know, humiliation that can happen.
Did they pay?
Normally, the people who are little more IT aware, you know, I would say they would not. But when it comes to complete encryption of the machine, where you can't do anything on the machine, there is only two ways that you can do it. You know, either you know, kind of redo the entire machine, or you pay, because very difficult to break the encryption code that they use normally to encrypt the data. But some of them are just, you know, hooks, you know, that they'll create. So ransomware is one big thing. As again I said, you know, a little bit of awareness, a little bit of more consciousness when you use internet, you know, can help. Good endpoint security software can help. You know, normally we run our machines. You know, as a layman, I would say most of the laymen, they would not care about what's running on their machine. If we can be a little aware of what's running on their machine, can always help. Another one area, I will not talk about the larger ones like state-sponsored and advanced ones. From the common, you know, public perspective. Another one that I'm seeing is you receiving mails from some of your knowns. That is being very popular in corporates now. Like CFO receives some mail, you know, from a CEO, you know, like say XYZ at abc.com. He is my CEO. He's sending a mail to CFO. I'm in a very serious meeting. Cannot pick up the phone right now. Just transfer this much of money immediately. And the CFO thinks my CEO is, you know, probably closing a deal, or, you know, doing something, or, you know, playing to a vendor. Let me do that immediately. And they do that. You know, we normally call it CEO fraud in our language, but that's also very common these days. So social media, you know, a lot of you know, activities that we are seeing, you know, being leveraged as a platform for. So these are some of the trends from, you know, normal consumer you know, consumer's perspective. From the state perspective, it can be a little more difficult. They are looking at utilities, you're looking at bringing your infrastructure down, your power generation, you know, engines and all that. So these are a few of the things that I would talk about rather.
Vivek, you had this very interesting anecdote about women being ahead of the curve in predicting these things.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay. So that comes from actually in some of our team members in our security research organization. So what we have at Cisco is about a team of about 350 guys. And these guys are actually the breed which normally adversaries are, the hackers are. They think alike, they think like them, they probably try and think ahead of them, but only for a good cause. You know, they'll be part of some of those forums, we're probably sitting with them trying to understand what is that next that they can do. They will do themselves, they will do a lot of hacking, on various systems provided to them in the lab, try and figure out what is the next step that hacker can take, what are the next area that they can try and attack. What I've seen, I've got a couple of colleagues, women colleagues, who are cybersecurity specialists, like me, but we are like customer facing, right? We've got multiple women actually in the organization who do this first-hand research, who do the hacking, do figure out, what the next step that the hacker is going to take. So that was the change that I was talking about. It's pretty interesting, As I said, they are differently wired, so they can think slightly better than, men.
All right. Other questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am, please.
Hi. I wanted to bring to light, what is the consumer protection for the cyber theft that we have experienced? This is HDFC Bank, and my daughter's sitting in Guwahati, and her money, and the call center calls her that $1,000 is being used in Indonesia. And she said, no, I'm sitting right in Guwahati, so please cancel the card. I said, okay, put it in the mail, and that has gone in. Apparently, her card has been cancelled, but the money has been debited. And since then, it's been July this year. Nothing's happened. Who do I approach?
Okay, so that happens primarily for two reasons. Normally such attacks, if you look at, one is that they are able to gain some control at the source itself, where where your data was stored, probably some slack or some a miss that they had, and that got leaked, which happened in multiple other cases also, like say database leaks that we had. Second can be the when you use your card yourself, right? There are multiple areas where they try and clone your cards. It can be as simple as small petrol pump. It can be a typical website which is not taken care of the security standards, which is not PCI certified. It can be taken at that level as well. But normally what I've seen in my experience, most of the banks are very, very user friendly. When they realize such attacks are there and some misuse has happened on the credit card, they take the responsibility. Normally they have also back-to-back arrangement with the insurers, that such activities should also be insured so that they can pay back to their consumers. I can tell you one of the transactions which happened on my card, being a cybersecurity professional, I was driving back home, from office and I was seeing, continuously I was seeing some 3-4 transactions. SMSs were coming, I was driving, I couldn't pick it up, couldn't see it, and then the moment I stopped the car, I saw some 5, transactions, which happened on Microsoft website on Xbox game purchase. And I was like, I am not an Xbox member, neither is my son. Neither is my son. He is normally a PSP guy, so it's not possible. So I called up the bank. I would not take the name of the bank. I called up the bank, and what I did not like at that point in time, when the IVR started telling me press 1, press 3, press 4, press 5, and press 7. I said you should have a hotline when you want to report credit card fraud. Now they have added, not many of the banks have added. You want to report lost, you want to report fraud of the card, there is a hotline that you press, this number. So she realized, she immediately cancelled my card, stopped the card, and they still have some time left. It will depend on how fast you can report to them. If you report it to them fast, they have the time left, so they'll not make the payment. They'll go back to the Visa or MasterCard, who is the payment gateway, that this transaction has been reported as fraudulent. So they would not do that. They reversed all the money, back to my, card and issued a new card. I could not figure out what was the source of it, that why it happened to my card. But normally I would say that the decent banks have taken a lot of care, in kind of securing your data. And normally they're very customer friendly. They understand still after all these precautions it may happen. So they have also have back-to-back alignment with the insurers, so that in case if they paid the money, insurers can help you with that.
Yeah. So does that mean, so does that mean we have to keep we've spoken, HDFC themselves had, got in touch. So what does that mean for the consumer? Do we keep at it, or do I?
I think you should keep at it. You should keep talking to them. There's ombudsman. If you think they are not addressing your this thing properly, there's ombudsman that they have. You can. I would still say that you take the processes given, the liberty given to you by the bank itself. You use those processes, and I think
We've done it, the entire processes. In fact, they called to take this up. It was their call center who asked, are you in Indonesia? And in spite of that, the money got debited. So it should be their onus. I would expect more from HDFC.
I guess so, yes, probably yes.
Gitanjali, you have thoughts?
No, I was just going to give advice because the same thing happened to my brother.
I see.
And he had to go the legal route. He had to go and file an FIR, and then it took a legal route, and it took almost a year and a half before they paid him back. But we kept at it, we persisted, and we just, we just represented ourselves. But he got it back.
Almas?
Thank you.
What happens in the US, the banks issuing credit cards, they always have limited liability. So you have, as a cardholder, you have a limited liability of, it could be $500, usually not more than $1,000. So even if there's a fraud of $2,000, $3,000, that is the limited liability that you will face. So you should insist on your bank that you must have, and that is actually because those banks are insured with the insurance companies. So the bank actually gets the money from the insurance. The bank actually does not lose anything. So, but you must ask the bank that you must have a limited liability, for the consumers. Another thing is that every good thing and bad thing, credit card, virtual money, digital money is a good thing, but we have to be careful. We really have to be always careful, otherwise we can be exploited. We should be insisting on, when we use the credit card online, we have to make sure that it has the SSL, the security, it's a secured website. The gateway that I am using, that is a PCI DSS certified gateway. So these are the things that we should, as a consumer, we should be careful about. Just like when we go to sleep at night, we close our windows and lock our doors. So we really have to be careful about protecting our money and our credit cards.
And how great would it be if there were a set of regional standards that applied to all of these topics that could be shared amongst all the countries in the region? I think regional connectivity in the context of cybersecurity or anything digital for that matter is another platform that the region could share together, which would do nothing but empower the region. I think it would be fantastic for this to be not just a Bangladeshi approach or an India approach, but something that could be shared sort of across.
I'll share another thing. In Bangladesh, because of this, because we also do not have, the banks does not have that limited liability thing, and they're not insured in Bangladesh also. And that is why they were very, very skeptical, and they did not use, now they do, but they did, for a long, long time, they did not allow using your credit card online. And if you had to use the credit card online, you had to call the bank every time, and you say that, okay, I will be using this much of money, please open it for like half an hour or 5 minutes or 1 hour, whatever, and after that transaction, you close it. We still do it. When I came to India, I had to do that for my international cards. And I had to give where I'm going, from which day I will be returning. And they have given me a limit of $1,000 transaction per day. So these are the limitations, and this discourages e-commerce, the flourishing of e-commerce. And we had to go through, we had to sit with the central bank and the banks, and we had to make them understand. And gradually they have relaxed, but there are still impediments, and banks are actually very jumpy about the online transaction.
So what would be your advice to the central bank to...
Insurance, get insurance. The bank should be insured, the credit card should be insured.
And how would that apply from a regional connectivity perspective?
We can look for best practices around the world, and we can have, for the regional connectivity, if you say, then it should be easier, because if a fraud happens, if a Bangladeshi card gets used in India in a fraud, in a wrong way, then the transaction or the recovery should be very, very easier, rather than it happening in somewhere else in the world. So the regional banks should have some kind of a agreement policy of, maybe reconciling the accounts. I'm not sure about that, though.
I think from the cyber security perspective, we still, we are yet to see the day where we have something like an Interpol, where they will do the sharing of various data that they have, and I can tell you in the central bank case of Bangladesh bank itself, it became extremely difficult because multiple countries were involved. Money was stolen from the central bank, but some withdrawal happened in Sri Lanka, some in Philippines, some activities in Indonesia. It became extremely difficult for them to coordinate, and Interpol was also brought in, but then the local pushback also from the countries that you don't take my name, you don't take my name, all that happened. So I think we need to have one common body, probably from cybersecurity perspective as well. That may help.
And what about you, Gitanjali? If you could give a piece of advice to the governments of the region, what would be your piece of advice when it comes to regional connectivity within the context of digital?
So I really feel that currently the way we're set up, we just have bilateral agreements with different countries. And we have to move, like you said, towards a system where you have an agreement which is operationalized in a certain way. It could be through an Interpol or some sort of regional body that actually actively anticipates, preempts, and is respected by all four governments, and is completely agnostic as to nationality and so on, like the EU. And I really feel that the SAARC perhaps is far too political, but we have to look at ways where this cooperation can go forward, and we have to look ahead.
And that could perhaps let the region get over the trust deficit, which
Absolutely.
currently otherwise exists.
And I think we are in many ways moving towards that, because what the digital world does is, lower the boundaries completely.
It's the great equalizer,
It's a
in
great
theory at
equalizer,
least. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Great. Other questions? All right, we'll go to Slido. Okay, sure, go ahead.
Just thought that I should bring to, we're talking about gender here, and it's very exciting to see that for the first time, the Doing Business report by World Bank 2017 has added gender perspective to 3 out of the 11 indicators to measure women's participation and inclusiveness. So I think that's a very good way forward, and we should ask for more studies on gender inclusion on every topic, every vertical possible.
That's music to my ears.
Okay, so one of the comments on, one of the questions rather on Slido, do we have a regional agency to counter cyber attacks? Are we competing with each other rather than collaborating? I mean, we've kind of touched on the fact that there is no regional agency.
But we all have our own agencies who are actually looking at it, and there is a good amount of regional coordination which is happening within these industries as well, within these agencies as well, whether you talk about CERT India or CERT Bangladesh. But I see a lot of scope of improvement. Multiple countries are doing things which are better in particular areas, like say some of our IT security activities that we do are much better than what's being done in Bangladesh, but some of their digital initiatives are better than ours. I think little bit of sharing and little bit of more discussion on these areas probably would help. But I think we have started seeing the coordination, but it has to go to the next level.
Sure, yeah. Thoughts there? Either of you, thoughts, Tad? No? Okay, so again, if anybody has a question, yes, please, in the back. We've got one in the back and one in the front. Can we start with the woman in the back, please?
Thank you. I was wondering about wage digitization in Bangladesh with regard to the garment workers. I know that Better Than Cash Alliance is doing some work to make sure that women that are working in the RMG sector are able to get their wages digitally and giving them more authority over how they get the money, how they spend it, et cetera, and also creating kind of this new economy in this space. So if you could talk a bit about that. And also, with regard to F-commerce, I think Mr. Kabir, you mentioned, I was wondering how much of those businesses are informal versus formal, like the Facebook commerce online that's going on.
Okay. The Facebook commerce are mostly informal businesses. They are not registered. They don't have trade licenses. And that is why we do not really have very concrete data of the volume of the business. But the guess is it's about 3,000 pages. About the garments workers, yes, they do get their salary, the wages through MFS, the mobile financial services. It gets sent to their mobile phone, and they can also keep it there in the wallet, or they can send it, some portion of it to their village, to the family. But what I would be more interested in is another thing. You know that I have been talking about, or rather we have been boasting about our RMG success for a long time now. And the main reason of this success is the cheap labor. And that is why, you know, the entire world actually get their clothes made in Bangladesh. But the problem is that when the artificial intelligence and the robotics will be coming, and they have already started coming in, and in the next 3 to 5 years, I am afraid that a lot of these workers will lose their jobs. So unless we immediately, if we do not start giving them or train them in other roles, and these roles will be the digital, how to use those robots, how to program those robots, how to maintain those robots, or something else, I don't know. So that is the thing that we really need to do. Otherwise, there will be a very big disappointment coming in our way in the next 3 to 5 years. So that is what I am more interested in, and that is what we are discussing. We have just initiated the dialogue in Bangladesh.
And the topic of digital payments.
And yes, they are already using digital payments. And as I was saying earlier, that the entire success of bKash, which is the largest MFS in the world, is because of these garments workers. So they get their payment through bKash, and there's another service called Rocket. So these two are actually doing wonders, and they are completely, almost all, I would say almost 100% of these workers actually now use MFS, the digital money.
Yes, ma'am.
So my question is so much related to what's that question out there. How could you help bring international connectivity to Bhutan via northeast India, the one going to Agartala from Cox's Bazar, since I can't see that? Anyways, it is more or less related to that. It's almost answering my question, actually. Digitization is the most effective equalizer, especially for a landlocked country like Bhutan. No. But the thing is, when we are talking about the masses, our population, and mostly I'm talking about women and, again, primary producers, we don't have the volumes, first of all. First of all, we have to get the volumes, as I mentioned earlier, no, to be able to get into this. But there are a few challenges, and I don't know whether this could be addressed by the group here. So we have, the cost of internet is still too high. It's still too high for us. Then the lack of reliable connectivity, especially, you know, in far-flung areas, I mean, it is not reliable yet. And then there's an absolute lack of digital literacy. So we're really starting from grassroots, actually. So, you know, and then most of the citizens are new to buying products online. In fact, I mean, I also don't know how to buy online, frankly speaking, and that's the truth. So, and then there's a lack of digital signatures and no clear legal framework for e-commerce. You know, so what do we do here? I don't know whether this is probably something, maybe the government is doing something on this. I'm not too sure, because I think that would be required going forward. And of course, there's lack of strong logistics and lack of trust, which is the major. But the whole thing boils down to it being enabling, way of, enabling our women. So this is something that seriously needs to be addressed. And I don't know, talking to the panel here, whether you can understand where I'm coming from. And finally is how we need to grow organically. Something that I think Mr. Kabir was talking about, localized, I would imagine is being organic, something that we need. We know what we need, and we need to grow like that, using the technology that is already available, and how to make it, effective and impact-oriented.
Thoughts on that? Yeah, go ahead.
as you know that since 2009, if I'm not wrong, there has been talks of connecting India, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Bhutan through a fiber optic connectivity. 2009. Uh, and very little improvement has happened since then. I would blame the political will and the political, anyway, and the bureaucracy. But because I do not see any other reason, because there is no other challenges that I can see. Physically, it is very much possible. And what I believe that more than 600 kilometers of fiber has already been laid. Bangladesh is now already connected to Nepal under that project, but I'm not sure about the rest. But of course, you see, the countries, they must be looking after their interest. Bangladesh has interest in Bhutan, as Bhutan has interest in Bangladesh. So there is a mutual interest there, and I believe there is one talk going on right now that how Bangladesh can supply internet bandwidth through the submarine cable that comes to Cox's Bazar to Bhutan. We are already providing internet to Nepal and to the southeast, the Seven Sisters states in India. So how we can extend that to Bhutan. So the talks have been going on right now. And once this connectivity is done, I'm sure that there will be, again, many doors of opportunities like e-commerce and everything will open up. So the cross-border e-commerce, the cross-border trade will actually become very, very big once that happens.
And that's by and large above land fiber optic cable.
Yes, yes.
I just wanted to address your concern about the gender angle, and I totally agree with you about how there is this complete, it's like a black hole when you talk about the internet in remote and landlocked locations like Bhutan, and you're absolutely right. In fact, what we have typically seen is, because there is no information and because the space has not opened up as much as it needs to, so first of all, you have lack of connectivity in your capital and in your cities, and then of course remote locations are even more left behind, and you have absolutely no access. And that you feel more, so you see the classic thing of, the city, the villages and the, remote locations being completely disconnected. You see this classic situation of, girls not having access and not knowing how to take their, product to the next level. And that again is manifested in how the region trades with Bhutan, because you rely a lot on imports and you can't produce enough volumes for yourself, so you can't even export. So that's a separate thing, So I think all these issues get resolved once you bring in this great equalizer. And also, I would say you're also quite fortunate because you have this opportunity to learn from other countries and see what we have faced and the challenges we're having, to educate people enough to actually prepare themselves for when this opens up in Bhutan. So that's my comment to your, but I'm completely in agreement with you.
Okay, Gitanjali, you have a magic wand, and you have the opportunity to speak to the leaders of these countries and to the leaders of the private sector that exist in these countries. As a closing thought, what would be your one request in order to integrate the region more digitally?
I think we have to find common ground, and the common ground is, of course, trade and improved economic benefit. And that is what this improved, or any sort of coordination on regional connectivity should ride on. That our communities will prosper, there will be more growth, the region in general will grow faster than it needs, as fast as it's required to, because currently we're really lagging behind, especially in this critical part of the world. It's blessed with natural resources. It's blessed with people who are willing to work, very hard working and really skilled. But it lags behind for all these various reasons. But I think it has to ride on the back of economic growth.
So you'd get them to really understand that philosophy, and you think that would be the tipping point?
Well, well, we should all get together on this as well. You know,
Yeah.
it's not just me, but I think the economic argument is something that the governments take very seriously.
Yeah. And certainly does the private sector as well.
Certainly,
right?
yes.
Yeah, right.
So that's what I would go
Great.
for.
Yeah. Almas, what would be your one request or your one action that you think these governments and the private sector could take to connect more in the area?
Again, as Gitanjali said, there has to be a common ground. People must have, I mean, the countries must agree to certain standards. I'm not very sure about the number of countries, but there is a project from UN SCAP right now. It's called the APIS, Asia Pacific Information Superhighway. And interestingly, it's not only covers the Asia Pacific countries, but also countries from, some countries from Central Asia. And once that happens, and the talk is actually live right now, and the governments are getting together. United Nations is actually proceeding with this, SCAP. So they have identified problems among these states, countries. They have suggested how to make a controlling body, a board or a council, and what will be the role of that council, how to govern this superhighway. So once this happens, I believe that, I am optimistic about it. I believe that the trade, especially the digital trade, the e-commerce, will actually will have a big boom in this region.
Yeah, Vivek?
So I would, my single suggestion probably would be to probably speed up the process of learning from each other and try and replicate. You know, someone is doing something better, someone is doing something good, someone has already done something, has already learned it. Try and replicate. Talk to each other more, coordinate more. Don't reinvent the wheel in every single area. If something has been done good somewhere, copy it.
Imitation is the greatest form of flattery. We know that. Great. Great. Well, with that, please help me thank our panel for a rich, lively discussion in a very difficult time slot. Let's give them a round of applause, please.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thanks to the panel for this reflective knowledge. And now I would like to invite my colleague here on the stage, Ms. Susan. She is going to award the certificates, E3 certificates to our panelists. So we thank you all for giving us your valuable time and enlightening the audience. And I have an announcement for all of you. The tea and coffee break is going to start now at 3 o'clock, and at 3:30 we assemble again for the next session. So instead of the Rani Bagh lawn, which is the venue given in the agenda for the tea and coffee, you need to assemble for tea and coffee at the Shahjahan room, at the back side of the Shahjahan room. So the venue has been changed for tea and coffee. So I'll see you all at 3:30 again. Thank you.